Hey guys, it's Eleanor. So I don't know about you, but in quarantine, for like the 2 months we've been in quarantine, I've been watching a shit ton of movies. And out of probably like the 30 that I've watched so far, I decided to narrow them down into 17 movies that I really recommend you watch in quarantine. So let's just get into the video. So I decided to rank these really last minute. I was like, instead of just saying, you should watch this movie, you should watch this movie, I ranked them. So like 17 being like, you should still watch this movie, but you don't like have to. Like it's not, you won't miss much. But like number 1 being like, you need to watch this movie right now. So also keep in mind that all 17 movies on this list, I have watched in quarantine. It's not like I watched this movie in September and I think it'd be good for quarantine. All the movies on this list I have watched at least once so far out of the 2 months we've been quarantined. So yeah. So let's get right into number 17, which is The Dark Crystal. If you haven't seen The Dark Crystal, I'm not surprised, but like, I think you should. So if you haven't seen The Dark Crystal, I'll tell you what it's about. So The Dark Crystal is set in a fictional world where there is a damaged dark crystal, and if it doesn't get put back together, then the villains of the movie will rule forever. I think they're called the Skeksis, but I might be butchering that, but I think it's the Skeksis. So this elfling gets told that he has to find the missing shard and put it back together. So it's his journey finding the shard and putting it back together. So I really recommend you watch. Not only is the puppetry in this movie amazing, but it's also just a really great movie. The story is really cool. It's just really good. So number 16 goes to A Quiet Place. A Quiet Place is a pretty popular movie. I bet you've seen it. If you haven't seen it, I'm also not surprised though. I don't know. I think you probably have seen it, but it's definitely worth a rewatch because I rewatched it in quarantine. So A Quiet Place is set in a world where there are these blind and noise sensitive creatures that are killing a lot of people. So this family has to stay quiet in order to survive. I think the real reason why I watched this movie is because of the cast. It's an amazing cast. So John Krasinski came up with the idea. He was the director, and he's also in the movie along with Emily Blunt. I love seeing them together. So that was the main reason why I watched it, and also because Noah Jupe is in it. And if you don't know already, Noah Jupe is the love of my life. So this is Kairie editing. I would just like to say that there are 2 movies on this list that have Noah Jupe in them, and he was pretty young in both of them. So I'm 13 now, and he's 15 now. Just keep that in mind. He was like 10 or 11 or 12 in both of these movies, so okay. But I was very surprised by the story. Like, I never looked away from the screen. It's an amazing story, so that's why it's on the list. Number 15 is Howls Moving Castle, and I don't watch a lot of anime. I used to watch a lot of anime when I was in like grade 6, I think. I watched like Attack on Titan, I watched a lot of Death Note. So I don't watch anime anymore, but about like a year ago, I think, my brother Cameron and my sister-in-law Neva got me to watch Howl's Moving Castle, and it's an amazing movie. And I watched it a couple weeks ago, like kind of near the start of quarantine. I rewatched it, and it's still amazing. So so the movie is about a girl named Sophie who meets a wizard named Howl who lives in a flying moving castle, and this witch casts a spell on her and makes her look old, and Howl has to figure out how to make her young again. It's a very good movie, you know. I laughed, I cried, I shed a few tears, but I smiled loads. It's a great movie. And if you haven't seen it, it's definitely worth a watch. And if you have seen it, it's definitely worth a rewatch. Number 14 goes to Suburbs, which is a less known movie, I think. I don't know. But it was pretty insane. That's why it's on this list. I watched this movie for the first time last year, and all I remember from it was it being really insane. And then I rewatched it a couple days ago, and I was like, this needs to be on the list. This movie is insane. So the movie is about this family that is in this all-white community, and then this African-American family moves in, and that's where the chaos starts. So this white family gets really involved with it because their son becomes friends with the African-American family's son, and it's just really chaotic. The thing about this movie is it gets more and more insane as the story goes on. Like, you're like, whoa, that part there was pretty wild. And then like 2 minutes later, another crazy thing happens and you're like, whoa. So I really recommend you watch this movie if you haven't seen it already. It is amazing and it's definitely worth a rewatch, especially if you haven't seen it in a while, like me, because it was an experience. Number 13 goes to Extremely Wicked, Shockingly Evil, and Vile. Now, there are very mixed opinions about this movie. A lot of people didn't like it. A lot of people did like it. I personally liked it. So the movie is a true story about Ted Bundy. If you don't know who Ted Bundy is, he was a serial killer in the 70s. And it's basically his, like, killing spree, basically, but told from the perspective of his longtime girlfriend. And it just makes the whole story way more interesting because she just denied it for so long. And just seeing her character development was insane. And the fact that it's a true story makes it even more insane. However, Zac Efron played Ted Bundy in this, and that was a bit weird because I know him as Troy Bolton, but it was interesting. But I overall very much enjoyed this movie, and I think it's a great watch. Number 12 is Perks of Being a Wallflower. Now, this is another very popular movie, so I bet you've seen it. If you haven't, what are you doing? Watch this movie. So the movie is about a guy named Charlie who enters high school and he befriends these seniors. And the whole movie is basically him making new friends and also learning to cope with his traumatic past. It's a great coming of age movie. It's a really great watch, and if you have already seen it, it's a great rewatch. Number 11 goes to Easy A, which is another very popular movie. If you haven't seen it, what are you doing? Emma Stone is in this movie, and I love her with my whole heart, and that just makes the movie even better. If you haven't seen Easy A, it's about this girl named Olive who lies about losing her virginity to her best friend, and the story spreads and it gives her this kind of bad reputation. So I realized the way I worded that sounded wrong. So basically, let me just make it clear. She did not lose her virginity to her best friend. She lied to her best friend about losing her virginity. Okay, just so we're clear. Thank you. I've seen this movie 3 times, and I first watched it not even a year ago. So I watched it for the first time with Caitlin and Nina in July, and then I watched it again in September, and then I watched it again a couple days ago with my family. It's a really funny movie, so if you're looking for a comedic relief type thing, watch that. Number 10 is Call Me By Your Name. This movie has been getting very popular since it came out, basically. And this movie isn't popular just because Timothée Chalamet's in it. It's also popular because of the aesthetic, because it's in Italy, so the aesthetic of the movie is very top tier, but also the storyline is very cute and also very sad, so that's why it's on this list. So the movie is set in 1983, and it follows this teen boy who is spending the summer with his family in Italy, and that's where he meets Oliver, who is working as an intern for his father, and they fall in love. How cute. This movie made me laugh, it made me cry, it made me smile. It was a roller coaster of emotions, but I really recommend you watch it, and not just because Timothée Chalamet's in it. It's a great story too. Number 9 goes to Alex Strangelove. Now, the only thing about this movie is that it's a Netflix original, and I feel like if you don't like Netflix originals, then you probably won't like this movie, because it can get pretty cheesy. But I looked up the rating on Rotten Tomatoes, and I think it was higher than most Netflix originals are on Rotten Tomatoes, and that's why it's on this list. So the movie is about this guy named Alex who plans to lose his virginity to his girlfriend, but things get a bit complicated when he meets Elliot, who is an openly gay kid, and he starts to question some things. This movie made me laugh several times, made me cry several times. Again, a roller coaster of emotions. It's on Netflix, so it's an easy watch. And if you have already watched it, rewatch it. It's great. So number 8 goes to Clueless. Again, a very popular movie. So I bet the majority of the people watching this movie have seen Clueless before, but there are very mixed opinions about this movie. I personally like it. I think it's really funny. If you haven't seen Clueless yet, it's about this girl named Cher, who is a rich high school student who is learning to deal with just like life problems and discovering her feelings, and all while helping her new friend gain popularity and dealing with her ex-stepbrother, Josh, kind of. But it's a really funny movie, and I really recommend you watch it. Number 7 goes to Flipped. There is such a big place in my heart for this movie. If you haven't seen the movie, it's about this girl named Julie who has had a crush on her neighbor and classmate Bryce since they were kids, but he never liked her back. But then things get complicated when she starts losing feelings, he starts catching feelings. It's a bit confusing, but it's a really great movie nonetheless. I really love watching it, and I think it's on Netflix, so easy watch. So number 6 goes to Princess Bride, which is a very popular movie again, but it's definitely worth a rewatch. Princess Bride is one of my favorite movies of all time. It's just so good. If you haven't seen Princess Bride, you were probably young, or my age, because like I don't know, but you should watch it. The movie is set in this fairy tale where this girl gets separated from the guy that she loves, and then she gets in a dangerous situation and he has to find her after a very long separation. And it's just a great movie. It's so funny. You know, like the relationship is cute and all, but the main reason why I watch it is just because it's so funny, and I love it's a great movie. The book is also good, so books to read in quarantine. Princess Bride. So number 5 goes to another very popular movie. I'm sorry, Legally Blonde. I can't say how many times I've watched this movie. I've watched it a lot because it's just so good. If you haven't watched it, what are you doing? I actually have a lot of friends that haven't watched it, which is disappointing. So if you're watching this, watch it. Listen up. Legally Blonde is about this girl named Elle, and her boyfriend dumps her for a girl who goes to Harvard. So then Elle decides to get enrolled in the same school so she can teach him a lesson, but of course discovers more things about herself as well. It's a great movie. Definitely one of my favorite movies of all time. It's just really good. And if you haven't watched it, watch it right now. And if you have watched it, it is worth a rewatch. So watch it. So number 4 goes to another very popular movie. I apologize, Titanic. Literally, this movie is a very, very popular movie. I bet even if you haven't seen it for some reason, you've heard of it. So, but it's always an amazing rewatch. It's 3 hours long, but it's an amazing story. In the end, the last hour is always like intense. It doesn't matter how many times you watch this movie, the last hour hits different. If you haven't seen Titanic for some reason, let me tell you what it's about. Titanic is about a girl named Rose who boards the Titanic and falls in love with a guy named Jack, all while being engaged to another man. So it's a bit of an issue. But I bet even if you haven't seen the movie, you know about the sinking of the Titanic. So it's always an interesting movie to watch. So now we're getting into the top 3. This is intense. And number 3 goes to The Edge of 17. This movie, I don't know how popular it is. I hadn't heard of it until I got a suggestion from someone to watch it. Thank you. The movie is about a girl named Nadine who is a pretty awkward teenager, and when her brother starts dating her one and only friend, she feels more alone than ever. She goes through this whole like emotional spiral, doesn't know what to do, and it was an emotional movie, but I also laughed. So the movie, as you can tell by my description, is pretty sad, but also there are some pretty funny scenes. I think it's a great movie to watch, especially if you're a teenager. Haley Steinfeld is in it. If you like her, watch the movie. So if you have seen the movie, it's a great rewatch. But if you haven't seen the movie, please watch it. It's really good. Now the number 2 spot has a special place in my heart, and that is A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. I bet you've at least heard of the movie. Even if you haven't seen it, I bet you've heard of it. This is the most like new movie on this list. It came out last year. like end of last year, so I think it's pretty recent. If you haven't seen the movie, it is a true story about a journalist named Lloyd who gets an assignment to interview Fred Rogers, also known as Mr. Rogers. And Mr. Rogers is played by Tom Hanks, which is amazing. I don't think I've ever watched a movie where I just was crying the entire time. I would cry when sad things would happen. I would cry when happy things would happen. Literally, Tom Hanks would talk and I would start crying. It's a very emotional movie, but it's an amazing movie, and I really recommend you watch it. Now, the number one spot goes to my favorite movie of all time, which is Love, Simon. I bet you've heard of the movie before. It's very good, so let me tell you about it. So the movie is about a teenage boy named Simon who is keeping his sexuality a secret from his friends and family, but then a blackmailer threatens to reveal it. So he goes to great lengths to keep it a secret, and it's a really great movie. The end of this movie always has me crying, like hard. It's funny, it's sad, it's the best movie, and I love it so much. If you haven't seen this movie, I really recommend you watch it. I don't think it's on Netflix, at least in Canada, but I have it bought on Apple TV because I love it so much. And I really recommend you watch it if you haven't, and rewatch it if you have, because it never gets old. And those are all the movies that I suggest you watch in quarantine. I hope you like them. But that was the video. I hope you liked it. If you did, make sure to give it a big thumbs up and subscribe to below, and don't forget to hit that bell so you get notified when I post a new video every single weekend. Okay, I'll see you guys next week. Bye!